As part of the legal hackers community, what we do is we organize events. And one of the events that we had in Nairobi was a Coding for Lawyers class. So I got together a group of 20 to 30 lawyers. These were proper advocates, like guys who've been practicing for 5 to 10 years. I sat them down in a room, took them to Africa's Talking. I don't know if you know Africa's Talking, but it's a unicorn startup based out of Nairobi that has expanded to about 10 or more countries, and they offer different solutions, value-added services, including USSD. So I took them, we sat down, took them through about a 6 to 8 weeks course on coding. They sat down and they learned Python. So leads me to the question, do you think lawyers should code, or should we just leave the coding to the coders and the devs? We hire them, we either get front-end or back-end or full-stack engineers to do all the coding for us, or is there any value add in having lawyers learn how to code?
So I would say that it depends, firstly, on an individual, the lawyer.
Spoken like a true lawyer. No yes or no answer.
But okay, so I would say there needs to be an understanding of how code works. That might not necessarily always need the lawyer himself or herself to actually do the coding. But you need to understand what a coding language is. So, for example, if you have a case which has a technological aspect or tech aspect to it, you need to understand the terminology that's used. You need to understand the basic way that the technology works. So you need to understand what is encryption, what is blockchain, what is coding, what is Python, and things like that. But beyond that, it's now up to whether the lawyer has time, whether the lawyer has interest, and whether the lawyer is even creative, because why would you code? Like, do you code to create apps? Do you code to automate processes? Or do you want to code because you've heard Simba say coders are cool people? So there has to be like a real reason why someone would be interested in that. I would say that's my almost yes answer in brief.
I think for me, it's more of, first of all, yeah, like he said, understanding the why, right? I don't think everyone should go do it because of FOMO, fear of missing out, and it's like the hottest topic, and everyone's doing it. I'd rather people actually understand the why and then be able to see how this will benefit them professionally, right, and even personally. And as a tech educator, I've had instances where people from different backgrounds have asked me, can you teach me how to code? How do I get started? But then they start, and then in the middle of it, they're like, okay, this is not for me, right? So mostly, I wouldn't ask lawyers to leave their 8 to 5 to go learn how to code, but more like looking at, how is the future of work, right? What will tech look like 10 years from now? What do it look like 5 years from now? And how will it look like in the space of law, if that's what you call it? And trying to also position yourself in a place where you have competitive advantage, right? Coding, people started coding like 10 years ago, Mark Zuckerberg started coding Facebook a long time ago, and now it's really, really hot, right? And because it's hot and people are making money very fast, that's why a lot of people want to do it. But now it's not hot anymore for techies. It's not really hot. Now we're looking at data. What can data do for us, right? How can we optimize our businesses and use technology and create digital interventions in the work that we do into our day-to-day, so that we can be able to move our processes forward, optimize our businesses, become cost effective, and make better decisions, right? And predict the future using technology. So technology now has become an enabler, and I'd say because it's an enabler, how can you now use it to make your business and your skills move forward? So that's my 2 cents.
Have you had any lawyers in your classes, and how has that been? Ni vichwa ngumu, yani, are they the hard-headed ones, the most talkative ones?
I've not really had necessarily lawyers come to me tell me they want to learn how to code, but last year I was part of the hackathon that was run by Lawyers Hub, and it was interesting working with lawyers because they ask a lot of questions, and I think that's where the advantage is, right? They know how to do their research, they know how to ask the right questions, and that provokes developers to think further and think, beyond just, we're creating technology, but what's the logic? What's the problem we're solving? So I think that's where the advantage is, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just start by saying, I think it was 10 years ago, I watched an interview by Steve Jobs. I don't remember when it was, but he did it just at the days when they were just starting out, and he said something really cool, in the context of what we're talking about. He talked about how one of the two subjects that anyone can ever study are either law or programming, right? And the reason for that is that he said it teaches you how to think, right? So you look at programming, you learn lines of code. You never learn how to create a specific thing. You learn how to create certain types of code and different languages, but then you are able to process it to create something unique and something new, which in my mind is the same thing that we lawyers do. And that's really you learn a specific subject, but you're supposed to apply that to your client and to come up with something that is unique and that is unique to every given case. So in my view, coding is not really something that is unique to lawyers or something that is new or that would be completely out of this world. Lawyers are really concentrated a lot. That requires a lot of concentration. So lawyers don't really need to start coding, but I feel like the transition, well, at least for me, I mean, I didn't start a long time ago, was not that difficult. At the end of the day, I think lawyers need to stop, if I can say this, pontificating about technology. Like, I mean, we go to conferences, we hear people talking, but people need to start doing the action. And the trouble is a lot of law firms or a lot of smaller practitioners actually don't have the capacity to be able to hire, big coders that, do big projects. So a little bit of understanding, if you hire people that are at the lower end of the sort of programming world, you need that level of understanding to be able to come up with something that is actually helpful to your law firm. So you might not need to be able to code, but you need to know how it works. You need to understand beyond Excel, beyond Outlook, which is what a lot of lawyers that I used to know thought was technology. So I think we need to go deeper and stop pontificating about tech, basically.
Can you code?
Yeah, I do. I do code basic stuff. I mean, I'm learning. I do code in Python and all that, and which is like what people always talk about. So I do code, but I'm learning, and it excites me. I don't code to actually do big projects, but I code because I think it's not that big of a transition from what I already do as as a lawyer and as a person who's in the startup world. I need to understand the product, so I do try my best to do that.
Okay. So as Mutindi gets ready to respond to that question and to introduce herself, I sat through that Python class as well, obviously because I had a team there. I had to sit through it. And so we did the whole 8 weeks. I have never used it in my life. It's on my CV. I say, I have an idea. I get the gist of what it is. But then what's important and what our trainer told us, which is exactly what everyone on the panel has said, was it shifts your way of thinking. It's for you to be analytical, query, and ask. When you're writing code, there's no, you can't, it depends it. You can't fake it. It either is or it's not. 1 + 1 can't be 2.5. It's the logic has to make sense. How you write your code, it has to flow. If it doesn't flow, then you have a bug and you have to figure out, damn it, where's this bug? And so it was the same thing that Simba is just saying, that it's the process and it's that understanding and the analytics behind it. The second thing also is when you have a basic understanding of some sense of technical understanding, you can call out your developers when they work for you. So for example, you get someone to build you a law firm management system. It's in line with the LSK policy, or what's it called? The handbook, the LSK handbook on law firm management system, but then it doesn't do anything for you. Your people will still have to scan their documents. They'll have to print. You have huge files. You have documents missing. But if you work together with this dev who has no idea what the legal system is, what the law process is, how court matters are handled and dealt with, or what chamber summons is, if you can work with them and take them through the process and have a basic or somewhat understanding of the system, then it's even hard for you to query it. So Mtinde, please introduce yourself. Tell us what your resolution was for this year. No, seriously, and where you're at. now.
Okay.
And then should lawyers code?
Okay, my name is Mutindi Mwema, and I'm a technology and telecoms lawyer. I sit on the Law Society of Kenya ICT and IP committee, and I am a regulatory and policy manager at Oxygen MCL. My New Year's resolution, one of my New Year's resolution was to write 3 more books. So I'm an author as well. I have a book on electronic signatures, the law of electronic signatures. So my resolution for this year was to write 3 books. I have started with my first book on data protection in the telco industry. So I'm somewhere in the messiness of the draft 0. Yeah. Whether lawyers should learn how to code. So I also took a coding class. We did the same class. Yes, so I'm a tech and telecoms lawyer, but then both my brothers are in tech. One of my brothers is a telecommunications engineer, and the other one is, he did BBIT, and he has a master's in mobile applications. Something IT. I don't even know what it's in, yeah? So what happened is I learned how to code because of the influence of my brothers during December holidays when you're all home. And you're sitting at home and your parents, are giving you house chores. I'm the only girl and the guys will be freeloading. And so I decided even me, I came home to have a holiday. So I'm going to do what y'all are doing. So my brother's the ones who taught me how to code. I think we started with, it's called, I've even forgotten the language. I think it's like C++ or something along those lines. Did a mini website. I was so excited the way you do the test run and then it actually comes up as a page. The first time I did my first sentence, my first image, first color change, and all that. Yeah. So I started because of my brother's influence and bonding with them, and then I also took the Python class. So what I'll say about it is, should lawyers learn how to code? Not necessarily for your job. What I'd say is you can go through the experience for purposes like gaining the experience and understanding how technology works. So one, it helps for me as a technology and telecoms lawyer when I'm dealing with technical disputes that relate to technology as a service. Yeah, so it really helps when at least you have some level of background understanding, because when people start disputing, the amount I handled, if there was a dispute on a technology service contract, that was basically about developing a system. So if you have absolutely no idea what development looks like on the back end, because the bottom line of the fight was the scope of work. So the client was making noise about, I hired you to give me a solution that does A, B, C, and D, but the company that was contracted says, no, you only hired us to give you A and B, and you signed off on this scope of work. So now you have a technical dispute that's running into the millions of US dollars, all about a scope of work for development of a solution. If you have no idea how development works, then it becomes very hard for you to even advise your client or help them mitigate losses or negotiate or come to an agreement with, the client that they're fighting with. Then secondly, it also just helps, as I think it's Simba who said, with the reasoning and the logic behind it. So if you're coding and, you're trying to code a program on that helped, what automatically makes tea, you have to literally code every single instruction. Pick the cup, put the water, the tea bag, take the tea bag. It's not just put a tea bag. Where do you get the tea bag? Where do you get the sugar? It's literally every single thing. So one of my takeouts from that experience, I'm like June, so I don't code. I don't use the code anywhere other than maybe bonding with my brothers over December holiday. But it really just helps you stop taking things for granted. As lawyers, because I'm a lawyer, that's my background, sometimes you assume people know what you're talking about when you're doing an advisory to the client, especially if you're external and you're advising companies, even the in-house, you assume people know what you're talking about. No, they don't. You have to, if it's take the tea bag, where is the tea bag found, where is it stored, where is it you really just have to go into the details of that. And then thirdly, part of what I also do, like it helps just attending. It's like learning by immersion. I like attending these events. They're like marketing events by Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and just going to sit in through the technical track, like with the techies, where they'll be going to talk about their code and all those things that they do as techies. And it's very interesting because where we're heading with the disputes we're going to be having today, if you order something off Jumia and it's not delivered, let's say there's a problem, you have to be able to understand as a lawyer, was the problem at the inventory stage, or was it at the cart when you are checking out, or was it after you've made the payment? And it has several implications, because, for example, if your in-house cancel at Jumia and there's such a problem, how do you fix it, and where does the issue lie? Was the platform developed by one developer, or are they 3 or 5 or 6 different developers? You kind of need to be able to understand how it works in the background for you to be able to embed and give advice. Yeah, so for the experience, it helps you be better at your job.
I like the tea bag analogy. Okay, wrapping up. I like the tea bag analogy. If you take nothing from this panel, just think about the tea, where you get it from, how you mix it, the steps that you have to take. As we close this off, what's the future of work? What's the future? Like June alluded to it, but what skills does the lawyer of the future need going forth? Right? Other than the normal ones that we are taught in law school and what's on everyone's CV, do you think it'll be an added advantage to have technical skills? I know for sure for me it was, because I stood out. But going forth?
Yeah, so for me, I don't think the way we do stuff as lawyers, lawyering is going to change. What is really going to change, in my view, is the business model around lawyers, around law firms. It's something that people talk about a lot, but people never do. Every lawyer in the room almost raises a bill, gets paid, raises more bills and gets paid. And my view is that what's going to change is how the process of actually hiring lawyers, the business model, what does it look like? Do we have law firms? Do we have independent advocates? What does it look like? So I think for lawyers now, the future, the skills that they need, obviously, like I said, coding is like, brain exercise for lawyers, and it's not too hard. But what they really need right now is to be able to position yourselves in a business model that will work in the future. And there's already a lot of debate around the current model. So if you can set yourself up to be in a model that really works and a model that changes stuff, I think that's something that would suit you well in the future.
I think for me, it's more on data, and big data it's hot and it's going to get hotter, and it's very, very important to know your data and to be able to visualize your data and have business intelligence, like to understand how is my business doing. I'm not very conversant about how law works, but this is very general for every single space, every single industry, right? Being able to get rid of the papers and have technology do the work for you, right? We're going to be having AI. We're going to be having AR. People are going to be studying through technology, right? You put on your Oculus glasses and you're in the classroom, you're studying, right? You don't need to go into court, right? Everyone is just logging in and we're in this space. So it's more about looking at what places can technology take over? If I'm doing my spreadsheets use manually, is there a software that can do this for me, right? So data is very, very important, because without data, you're not able to make predictions. You're not able to, you won't understand your business, and you won't understand where you're going. Because if I know every year I make X amount of money from, I don't know, my cases, right? And it's kind of, you can see a pattern and you can see trends, then you're able to predict next year, this is what we're going to be making. These are the problems we're going to be having. If there is an election, this is what we should be expecting, and we can have interventions for all these things that are about to happen, right? So it's being able to predict and see the future. Yeah.
I think we'll see a lot more in terms of automation. So this is software or software that is used to cut down the number of steps in a process. So like maybe even writing contracts, you now have software where you put in the names of the parties, the details, and boom, you've got a contract in 5 minutes. So what this now means is that day by day, the concept or the idea of a billable hour becomes redundant, because if it took someone or 5 people 10 hours to go through a document, and the software that's actually producing those documents, then it means that we might have to sell something different from time, because we're not spending as much time doing the things that we were doing in the past. So definitely a lot of automation. Probably if lawyers don't resist, there will be a change in the way that they cost their services. So now, since they can't exactly sell their time, they will then have to look for ways to value add that which they sell, which is their information. So I think it will move away, or it will move towards a more advisory centered way of working, where we see a lot of lawyers spending even maybe less time in litigation and more time on policy advice, giving policy guidance, giving advisory guidance on how laws are affecting technology and how technology is affecting laws. And lastly, we'll even see lawyers becoming more knowledgeable about how to use computers. Someone mentioned Excel and Word, and some lawyers right now still don't know how to use those programs. So we'll get to a point where we see lawyers actually maybe starting to use more of these basic technology tools. But then on the flip side, what I would like to caution is that as we automate things, including the delivery of legal services, we need to think about people that either cannot afford to get online, people that do not have the literacy to use the technologies. So even as we progress, we shouldn't do it in a way that leaves people behind. Because currently, if you can't use the technology, then you would be double disadvantaged.
And I'd actually just echo his sentiments. I'm one of those lawyers who does not spend much time on litigation. I am actually in the business advisory space. So it's really just changing into what you'll be selling. If you're no longer selling your billable hour, you are selling your people skills. It's about how you negotiate, who you can talk to, and your persuasion. You are selling your networks, your people networks, because whatever the business needs will always be something that needs to be approved or gotten from a human being, whether it's a regulator, it's a human being. If it's the people in a licensing department, they are human beings, so your networks. And then just like he said, there are also a new service opportunity for trainings, so that people are not left behind. There are new opportunities for the lawyers who, you can train on what you know. You can train people who don't know what you know. Yeah.